Hi, I'm Alex Jordan from Learn Color Grading and FilmSimplify.com. DaVinci Resolve 16 was released a couple of days ago, and usually I release a video detailing what I think about it. However, this time it took me a couple of days to release this video because I needed some time to work with a new feature that was added, which is the cut page. And when you look at it, it first looks like a watered down version of the edit page. So the question here is, why do we have a new page where we can edit? I mean, we've always had the edit tab in Resolve, and it's just a fully functional, very powerful edit tab. It's actually a full NLE. So why do we need it? Why should anyone care about the new cut page? Well, there is one word: speed. You see, in filmmaking, literally, time is money. Whether you're a YouTuber trying to push more content, a wedding filmmaker, or a corporate filmmaker, time is literally money. So the question here is, how can we make our editing process faster? Usually when you think of speed when it comes to editing, everybody thinks in a very simple way: a faster computer. A faster machine means you can edit faster, which is absolutely true. However, what Blackmagic Design did here is to ask themselves a very single question. What are the bottlenecks in the editing process itself, in the mentality? How do we edit? The way the edit page is built. Where are the bottlenecks that makes the initial edit much slower? Because when you think about it, the editing page or the editing tab in Resolve is extremely powerful, which means it can do a lot of things. Whatever you can think of, it can do. And this versatility, this extreme power comes with a downside, which is the editing process becomes a bit slower because we focus a lot on the ability of doing anything. So the cut page focuses on raw editing, just cutting films together and making the whole thing come together much, much faster. That's great in theory. I can detail a lot of things that makes this faster, but what we're going to be doing today is putting the cut page versus the edit page in a head-to-head comparison with some of the basic editing workflows, where you can see how the cut page can make your work much, much faster. So before we start the comparison, let's take a fast look at the cut page. So the cut page is pretty simple. You simply have your media to the left here. To the right here, you have one monitor, which works on 3 different modes. 2 of them you're already familiar with. So this is the source mode. You know, when you go to edit, usually we have 2 monitors. So if I drag this here, for example, now we have 2 monitors. This is the source monitor, and this is the timeline view. However, when you go to cut, they're both lump summed into one monitor. So if I click this button, now I'm in source view, I can view my clips. And if I click this button, now I'm in timeline mode. Of course, I don't have to keep on clicking. If I double click a source here, this will turn into a source. And if I simply drag the timeline, it will automatically focus on the timeline view. So you don't have to actually click these buttons at all. There's a third mode here that we will see in a bit. You have some buttons here. These are the same buttons we have in edit here. So for example, in edit, if I drag a file here, you have insert, overwrite, or for example, append to end. You have some of these modes in the cut page. So if I switch back to the cut page here, you have some of these modes here with new modes also added. This is where you have transitions. And if you click this button below the monitor, you have control to many effects. We'll get to these later, but this is where you can do stabilization, for example. So I'm going to click here to close this. And you see this button here? This is one of the most important buttons you're going to be working with. Then we have the timelines. We have 2 timelines. So the upper timeline is a zoomed out timeline that will always show us our timeline from beginning to end. You cannot zoom in into that timeline, which is unbelievably great, because one of the things where you waste a lot of time when you're editing, like a lot of time, is basically zooming in and zooming out. Every editor is assigning the zoom in and zoom out functionality to certain buttons, and half of your time at least is spent zooming into the timeline, to do some very clear editing process, then zooming out to the timeline to see where you are in the timeline and just keeping back and forth. However, now you have 2 timelines on top of each other. The first one is zoomed out entirely, and the second one, or the bottom one, is zoomed in. So at any time, without zooming in or out, you can look at your upper timeline, know exactly where you are on the timeline, and then take a look at the bottom timeline and, work with it more precisely. So this is a very fast look at the cut page. Now, before we move forward, I want to note something very important. The upper timeline is not simply a zoomed out static view. You can drag things to the timeline. So for example, I can drag this here. I can add it. So I just added the clip from the media pool to the upper timeline, and I can move things around in the upper timeline. I can trim from the upper timeline. Notice how when I trim, also the lower timeline shows you a reflection of what I'm doing. And you can actually drag things between timelines. So for example, I'll drag this clip here, and then if I want to move it, I can move it from the bottom timeline to the upper timeline in a very fluid way. Now, that's very important. Because you waste a lot of sometimes you just want to drag something from the end of the timeline, like you're zoomed in, and you want to drag something from the beginning of the timeline to the from the end of the timeline to the beginning, and you just have to zoom in, drag it, or copy it, zoom out, zoom into the other side, drag it over there, and it's just a mess. However, here I can simply drag things between timelines. So I can drag a clip from the upper zoomed out timeline to the lower one. Now, for anyone who have edited before professionally, you know how important this is, because the zooming in and out just goes out of control usually, and this is just unbelievable. So now that we just took a very fast look at the cut page, let's take a look at some operations and compare them between doing the same operation in the edit page versus the cut page, and see how much faster the cut page is. So let's start with the first scenario. I want to edit a clip. So I just want to trim it, and I want to trim a big portion of the clip first, and then I want to go in detail and just trim it exactly frame by frame. Now, without using keyboard shortcuts, this is what I usually do. Of course, we're starting with the edit page. I'm going to click on the trim edit mode to make sure that I can trim it without actually leaving any gaps. And then I'm going to have to zoom out. If I'm zoomed in, for example, I'm going to have to zoom out and then trim the part I don't want. So this is my major trim. And then I'm going to drag the playhead back here again and zoom in again to be more precise with my trim. And then I'm going to hover over the edit point, trim to the left or trim to the right to be more precise with my trimming, which is great. But notice that we need to zoom in, zoom out, and we had to switch mode, which took a long time. However, let's undo everything and repeat everything now in the cut page. So I'm going to switch to the cut page and notice something very important. On the top here, I have my zoomed out timeline that shows me the entire thing. And I can simply click here and start trimming on a large scale. Then note that without zooming in, I have the lower timeline already zoomed in. So I can simply click here and drag more precisely. So note that we did not need to select the trim mode. We did not need to zoom out to know where we are and cut a big part of the clip. And we did not need to zoom in. And when it comes to the cut page, take a look at the monitor now. The monitor is showing me a very precise frame accurate control without me needing to do anything. So this is the clip to the left. I can simply hover here and start trimming the clip to the left. I can click here and start trimming the clip to the right, and I can actually trim frame by frame on the left clip and on the right clip. Note that I can click here to trim frame by frame and here to trim frame by frame. So notice something very important. Once I selected an edit point, in the same page, I have 3 different zoom levels. So I can trim whatever I want on any level without needing to zoom in or out at all. I mean, imagine if you just need to trim like 1,000 clips per day, and every time you trim a clip, you need to zoom in or out multiple times. That's like, what? Unbelievable. So the first operation, which is trimming, is unbelievably faster with the cut page. Let's take a look at the second thing. So this is how it works. Sometimes you go out and you film a lot of things and you can't even remember what you filmed through the day, or someone maybe sends you some films to edit, and you just want to take a look at all your clips. So let's take a look at all of these clips in the edit page. I'll just click the edit page here. I'll delete everything from the timeline, and now I want to take a look at my clips. So I can hover over every single clip, which is not very efficient, or I can, for example, double click a thumbnail, and then I just went through the clip, or maybe I play it, and then maybe I'll just click this clip and play it, and just keep on clicking and playing around. Great. At this point, you will run into a weird problem. Some clips are very long. Other clips are short. So what you're going to be doing, naturally, we all do this, which is when you get into a longer clip, you're going to play it at faster than normal speed, just to go through the clip and see what's in it. And of course, you're going to have to decide the speed on a clip by clip basis, which is unbelievable. However, take a look on how the cut page shows your clips. So I'm going to switch to the cut page now. And these are the clips I have in my bin. Now, notice this button here. If I click it, notice what happened. Resolve got all the clips I have and merged them into one virtual clip. So I just play, and it will play from the first clip I have in my bin to the last one without me having to switch. So now I eliminated the need to keep on double clicking on a file and watching it, which is great. So now if you look at this line here, this line is simply a line that combines all these clips with the same order I have here. So if I switch the order to the left, this will, will switch here. Big deal. So now you could have always done this before. We could have always just created a new timeline, dragged all the bins to it. So for example, before we could have just selected everything, added them to a timeline, and started watching them. So what's the big deal? Well, take a look at this. In the cut page, after creating this source clip, what I can do is click this button. And this button will show me all the clips while speeding up longer clips automatically. So if there is a very long clip, it will be played back at much faster speed than a shorter clip, which means I don't have to keep on just deciding on every clip how fast do I want to preview this clip based on how long it is. I can simply click here and notice what will happen. Let's move to this point, for example. Okay, and now if I click, notice that it shows me this clip at a certain speed. The clip next to it is much longer, so it will play much faster. Take a look at this, how much faster it plays. It's just previewing, the things that I have in my timeline. This is a bit slower. It will play this much faster, and it will play the next one even faster, so that I can watch every single thing. I can just relax, sit, just take a fast look on everything I have in my timeline. Now, notice how much faster this happened. In the edit page, if I wanted to do the same thing, I would have either had to click on every clip, watch it, or maybe just drag all the clips into a new timeline that I don't need and just adjust the playing speed manually per clip. However, everything happens automatically here. So that's the second thing where the cut page is much, much faster, and it saves you a lot of time. The next thing is simply moving the playhead to a certain point. So, for example, if I want to move the playhead to a later point here, I'm going to have to zoom out, for example. So just zoom out to see exactly where I am. So 2 clicks to zoom out. Then I'm going to have to click on top here and keep on clicking, keep the mouse down and just drag the playhead where I want. And maybe when I get to that point, I'm going to have to zoom in again. So first we zoomed out, then we had to actively look for the playhead controller, drag it, keep on clicking, drag it where we want, and then zoom in again. So take a look at this in the cut page. I'll move to the cut page, and all of these steps are simply compressed into swiping around. Look, I'm just using the trackpad to swipe around, and in the upper part, I can see exactly where I'm in the timeline. So maybe I just want to move to this point. And in the lower timeline, it's already zoomed in. I did not have to zoom out. I did not have to go look for the playhead controller, the playhead itself. I didn't have to click it and keep on clicking, and I did not have to drag it and zoom in again. I mean, if that's not faster, I don't know what is faster. Like, seriously. I'm sorry, I'm just very excited. I like this. So let's move to the next point. Let's move back to the edit page, delete everything, and take a look at the next thing, adding clips. Now, there is a curse in all NLEs when you add a lot of clips, which is called, I don't know, I'm just gonna give it a name. The name is gonna be very creative, so I'm gonna call it focusing on the timeline after adding a clip. Go. Okay, so this is how it works. I'm going to select this clip here, for example, add an in point, add an out point, then add it to the timeline. And now my keyboard control just moved to the timeline. If I press play, my keyboard does not control the source monitor anymore. It only controls now the timeline view, which is a big problem, because now to add another clip, I'm gonna have to move back here, click again on the source monitor to activate it, then use my keyboard to add more and drag it one more time, and guess what? The focus moved to the right one. I have to click here again, which is not a problem when you're adding 100 clips. But in a very long editing session a day, this can waste unbelievable time. Now take a look on how this is done in the cut page. I'll move to the cut page here. I'll just remove these two clips here, double click on this, and now I'll just move in, out. So this is my source clip, and I'll add, for example, append to end. Notice what happened. I'm still controlling the source monitor. I did not have to click again in the source monitor to control it. So now I can in and here out, for example, add another one, move in very fast, add one here, and move fast. That's why it's called the cut page. It's much faster to cut things in this page. It's unbelievably faster. I have more things, so I'm just going to keep this a bit short. So the cut page wins again with this one. Let's take a look at the next one, insert. For example, I want to insert this clip between these two clips here. Note that to insert it exactly between the clips, the playhead must be exactly on the edit point. If the playhead is not on the edit point, and I inserted this clip, so this is my clip, and I hit insert, notice what happened. The insert happened exactly at the playhead, which was not at the edit point, which means that by mistake I cut a small part from this clip and I did not insert this clip at the right place. Let's undo, move to the cut page and repeat the same thing. Clip A, clip B, and I want to insert, for example, this clip in between. Let's just select a small portion. And now when I hit insert, notice what happened. Resolve understood that I want to insert at the point between these two clips, and that the playhead is not on that point, and in a very smart way, it adjusted the insert position between these two clips automatically. So I don't have to keep on zooming in and out to make sure that the playhead is always at the point between two clips. Resolve is smart enough to understand the difference and to understand that what I actually meant was to add something at that particular point. I'm not sure how to I'm not sure how to explain how excited I am, but anyway, that's just unbelievable, because if you edit it before, you always end up with all these very small chunks that are just cut throughout the film because by mistake you were like 1 frame before or 2 frames after, and you want to kill yourself. Anyway, let's move to the next thing. I have a lot of things. I'm not going to mention all of them now, but I'm just going to mention the last 2 things where we compare the edit versus the cut page. So let's say, for example, you have something with audio. So let's select a clip with audio, for example. So this is my clip here. I want to add an in point here, an out point here, and I want the in point to be very close to the peak at this point. Usually, I'm going to have to come here, go show full audio waveform. So now you're seeing the full audio waveform, but you're not zoomed in to add the cut exactly at the peak at this point. So you're going to have to switch to show zoomed in, and it just takes a lot of time. However, in cut, I have these scratch controllers here. So if I double click here, note that after selecting in and out, I have this controller to the left and this controller to the right. These are scratch controllers. So once I click it, keep on clicking and move to the right, once I start trimming from it, notice that the audio already zoomed in to show me exactly where I am, and it's accurate down to the frame. And once I stop, I'm zoomed out, shows me all the waveform again, and same with the right one, I can be very precise of where I select in and out. So of course, when it comes to the edit, to select audio accurately, you're gonna have to zoom in, zoom out, do many things. However, now it's just a scratch controller and it zooms in automatically to show you what you're doing. The last thing we have here, so the last thing I'm gonna add here in the comparison between cut and edit. Sorry, by the way, I'm sure I called it the trim page like 300 times. Please, whenever you hear trim page, just understand that I mean the cut page. Still new to the whole thing. The last thing is, sometimes you want to add a scene and you want to zoom it in. This is very common, especially at the age where most people film in 4K. So you just want to zoom in into a scene. So in the edit page, for example, if I want, let's just delete the whole thing here. And for example, I want to add this scene and I want to zoom into the car. So look at the steps. I'm going to drag it to the timeline. Then I'm going to click inspector if it's not opened. And then I'm going to zoom in, which is not a lot of work, but there's an easier way. Let's delete this, move to the cut page, select the same car scene. So double click, this is my car scene. And there is one button here where I click it. And this is already added with 2 times zoom, which is basically full HD. So instead of you having to zoom in, it zooms in, and then you can simply click on the controller here and you can just move the the car around and then close the controller just to get exactly the scene you want. I received a lot of emails after the announcement asking me to to explain why do we need a new page to edit. Well, it's not a new page to edit. The editing page is great. It's unbelievably advanced. It has a lot of new features, and you're gonna most of the time actually finish your edit in the editing tab. However, the initial cut, putting everything together, just putting the film together initially it just usually takes a lot of time, and this will make it much faster. So thank you very much for watching. One more thing, if you joined any of our course bundles that includes editing in the past year, you'll get a new course dedicated to the cut page for free. And of course, if you joined our courses on Film Simplified at any point, your courses are going to be upgraded for Resolve 16 for free for everybody as usual. So thank you very much. Please visit us at LearnColorGrading and FilmSimplified.com. Thank you.
FilmSimplified.com.